So for today's opening, Michael, we are just going to do the receipts for our movie predictions that we do normally at the back end of our reviews, but because Avatar is going to be such a long review, we're going to do it for our opening. So I'll just tell you what happened last time, because we didn't go through it last time. We did the Fablemans. We predicted what the Fablemans was going to get on our Catch Me If You Can review. You guessed 68, I guessed 91 on Rotten Tomatoes. Guess what it got?
So did it get someone like really between, like, I don't know, 70, 80?
No, it got 91.
Oh, well done, you.
I can't believe you guessed so low for this. Honestly, you really handed that to me because I basically won now. Because that added 23 points to your score, added 0 points to mine, which means you had a lead of 6. But now I lead by 17. Your score is 137. My score is 120. Time for Avatar, The Way of Water. Our predictions for that on Rotten Tomatoes. So I already have in my head what I'm going to go for. So I'm just going to say I'll go for, because this is our last one of the year, basically.
So you're going to tell me what you're going for?
Yes.
And then I can decide. So I can decide to do it so that, okay, I got you.
Right. So I'm going to go for 78.
Okay. I just, 95 seems so high, 96 seems so high, but the alternative would be like 60. God damn it. I'm just going to go for 96. Let's just assume it'll do really
96, let's go. He's going all in on James Cameron. He trusts him.
Yeah, I love James Cameron.
Okay, so let's see if you really do love him. Let's get into Avatar.
Hello and welcome to Select and Reflect, the movie review podcast where we look at films that have come out in the near and distant past. We give them a couple of watches and evaluate them beyond first impressions. I'm your host Michael, and joined as always by my co-host Luke. And this week we are celebrating the release of Avatar: The Way of Water by looking at the film Avatar. Full stop. I was about to say Avatar: The Last Airbender, but no, yeah, Avatar. So Luke, why don't you tell us a thing or two about Avatar?
I was going to make that joke. I was going to say, Michael, Avatar: The Last Airbender is a 2009 movie directed by M. Night Shyamalan. Actually, was it 2009 or 2010?
I think it was 2010.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, because when it first came out, I wasn't a nerd, so I didn't know anything about like anime back in the day. So when I first heard about Avatar: The Last Airbender,
it's not anime.
Well, it's like
it's just a normal cartoon. It's not anime.
Okay, yeah, fine. But like, okay, fine. Yeah, whatever. I guess I was just assuming because it had a vague East Asian element to it, that made it anime, but you're right, it's a Western thing. And I am racist.
It's not just, it's Chinese, not Japanese, that's pretty clear.
Right, anyway, so the point is I thought it was a sequel to Avatar when it first came out.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. That's stupid. Anyway, Avatar, also marketed as James Cameron's Avatar, is a 2009 epic science fiction film directed, written, co-produced, and co-edited by James Cameron. Wow. It's just, he is the man, isn't he? He can do all things. Starring Sam Worthington, Zoe Saldana, Stephen Lang, Michelle Rodriguez, and that handsome woman, Sigourney Weaver. Yeah, the movie was released on the 10th of December 2009 in London and 8 days later in the United States, so yeah, about 13 years ago. But of course, we're doing it because of its sequel, which has finally been released after all this time. And Michael, can you guess what the budget was for Avatar?
Well, I feel like I'm more confident probably guessing the box office than the budget. But it must have been so expensive, right? So maybe it costs 250 million.
That is a very good guess. It's 237.
Oh, well done.
So yeah,
well done, me.
Yeah, it was going to be around that, wasn't it? So well done. Now, you said you were confident on the box office.
Well,
so,
I am. Admittedly, I guess I'm confident I'm not going to go double because I feel like, when you're dealing with the billions.
Yes, that would be pretty impossible. Pretty impossible to do less than half as well. Although you were close with the Titanic, which we reviewed earlier on this year.
Oh, actually, that's a good point. Because what I'm thinking, the number in my head, and this feels like it's probably... Oh, I don't even know. I was going to say I thought this would be over. I think this would probably be a little bit under. I like to think this would be close to being bang on. I don't really know how this one did. 2 billion.
No, you fucking moron. No.
How much more than 2 billion was it?
You're 900 million off.
Oh, so it was 2.9 billion. Okay, yes, I should have gone for 3 billion.
The Force Awakens grossed 2 billion. Like, you're so out of... I'm just going to give you a mark for that.
That's cheating.
You can't be that far off. No, you can't be...
I can't be almost 1 billion off.
Well, don't you remember this and Avengers Endgame? They were competing to see who's the highest grossing movie ever.
Yeah, but the problem is we haven't reviewed Avengers Endgame yet.
Okay, but you must have heard about the stories, about it just creeping, and then Avatar gets a re-release and it moves ahead again, etc. And so it is officially the highest grossing movie of all time because of the re-releases. that it's had. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I mean, being absolutely truthish, I feel like once a film gets over 1 billion, I kind of just like, I then just mentally don't acknowledge really very much beyond 1 billion. I'm just like, oh, it made over 1 billion.
Yeah,
Well
you don't
done.
mentally acknowledge a lot, do you, in general?
Yeah.
Anyway, Michael, I'm just going to read you a few facts about this because, of course, we did the same for Titanic.
Oh, did we?
Yeah, in terms of the box office.
Oh.
Read you a few facts about the box office.
Factoids.
Because that also was a James Cameron movie that was 3 hours long, that featured an epic love story, and grossed the highest in history at the time, and this did the same, of course. So, before its release of Avatar, various film critics and fan communities predicted the film would be a significant disappointment at the box office, in line with predictions made for Cameron's previous blockbuster, Titanic.
Of course.
Do you remember that, Michael? We went through that.
Yes.
Yeah.
He always shows them what's what.
Yeah. This criticism ranged from Avatar's film budgets to its concept and use of 3D, quote, blue cat people.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
What a failure.
Yes, but those critics didn't know that people would find those blue cat people sexy.
Yeah.
They had no idea. Slate Magazine's Daniel Engber complimented the 3D effects but criticised them for reminding him of certain CGI characters from the Star Wars prequel films and for having the uncanny valley effect. The New York Times noted that 20th Century Fox executives had decided to release Alvin and the Chipmunks, the Squeakquel, alongside Avatar, calling that movie its secret weapon to cover any unforeseeable losses from Avatar.
Aha, now that is a good factoid right there. I like that
good.
factoid.
Alvin and the Chipmunks, the Squeakquel, was the fallback plan in case Avatar failed, which is great.
Yes.
Box office analysts, on the other hand, estimated that the film would be a box office success. The holy grail of 3D has finally arrived, said an analyst for exhibitor relations. This is why all these 3D venues were built for Avatar. This is the one, the Behemoth. Behemoth. Basically, yeah. This guy knew it's going to be a big hit. 3D, of course, played a massive role in that. And there were also analysts who believed that the film's three-dimensionality would help its box office performance, given recent 3D films had been successful. So, yeah, obviously, do you remember all the 3D mania at the time?
Yeah, well, you see, I thought that a lot of the 3D mania happened because of this film. And I've heard many people actually complain about that. Like, they said, oh, God, mostly when I say people, I mean, I watched a review by one Chris Stuckman, and he was saying that he thought the Avatar, the new one, was going to be good, but that he was worried that if it was good or if it did well, which it probably will, that would just lead to more needless CGI. Oh, sorry, not CGI. 3D.
Yeah, no, but I mean, Stuckman is right because you had movie executives then thinking 3D was just an automatic path to success. So
which is so stupid.
Movies that were already in production got altered to make them 3D, even though they weren't intended to be 3D, so they did not look anywhere near as good as Avatar, which was always meant to be seen in 3D.
Yeah.
You can see, of course, the contrast there. After the film's release and unusually strong box office performances over its first 2 weeks, it was debated as the one film capable of surpassing Titanic, and it did that by about 1 billion. So it did a good job. The Dark Knight, Wikipedia says, was a contender, but Avatar was considered the first film with a genuine chance. Its numbers being aided by higher ticket prices for 3D screenings did not fully explain its success to box office analysts. Most films are considered to be healthy if they manage anything less than a 50% drop from their first weekend to their second. Dipping just 11% from the first to the third is unheard of, said Paul, what is this name? De Garabedian of Hollywood. Of Hollywood.com. This is just unprecedented. I had to do a double take. I thought it was a miscalculation. That's what James Cameron will do to you, Michael.
Yeah.
That's what. How can these numbers be right? There must be something wrong here. No, James Cameron is just that good, isn't he?
No, yeah, that makes sense. He's defying the odds. They say it can't be done, but he shows them what's what.
It's just like Titanic. It's the same thing with Titanic being released in December, like Avatar, because what you have then is a weak January, and Avatar and
keeps going.
Titanic can just steamroll that. And on January the 25th, 2010, it surpassed Titanic's worldwide gross to become the highest grossing film of all time, 41 days after its international release, just 2 days after taking the foreign box office record, and 2 days later it took the United States and Canada domestic record as well. So do you remember that factoid last time about Titanic? Its highest grossing day was Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Which you did not get for 5 minutes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and of course this there was no Valentine's Day for Avatar 2 because
even though it is pretty sexy.
Yeah, I guess you could say it is part love story, but yeah, obviously that's not the main thing in the movie. So yeah, and it still just captured the public's imagination, particularly the foreign box office.
Well, you got to bear in mind, like, and not to be judgmental or anything, but foreigners aren't capable of understanding like people and like normal human beings. They only care about like CGI nonsense. That's why China cares more about robots than they do about black people.
Yeah, okay, that's an interesting take. Anyway, so you've got to compete head on with these other epic, this is from James Cameron, works of fantasy and fiction, the Tolkiens and the Star Wars and the Star Treks. People want a persistent alternate reality to invest themselves in, and they want the detail that makes it rich and worth their time. They want to live somewhere else, like Pandora. That's what James Cameron said.
Speaking of Tolkien, I've got a factoid for you. Do you know what film it was that made James Cameron realize that we were at the point technologically where his vision for Avatar could be realized?
Well, I'm guessing it was Lord of the Rings.
Which ones specifically?
I mean, probably the second one.
Yes, and I guess maybe you can think why it would be the second one?
Why would it be the second one? Because of Helm's Deep?
Oh, no. See, what it was is it was because the second one was the one that really started to feature kind of Gollum prominently, and it made him realize, like this CGI character thing, they can actually look pretty good.
Yeah, I was thinking about massive CGI action set pieces, but you obviously, the CGI character. Yeah, so that's the box office, and yeah, obviously, I think it's fair to say, it's the experience of going to the cinema, seeing Pandora. That's what raked in the big bucks. Yes, that was the key selling point. Anyway, so all of that was good, but development of Avatar began in 1994 when James Cameron wrote an 80-page treatment for the film. It was supposed to take place after the filming of Titanic, the filming of Avatar, and was meant to be released in 1999. Which of course wasn't possible, and so that's what Cameron thought. It wasn't achievable, kind of like George Lucas, right?
Yes, exactly.
With the prequels, and so he just then put it away for a rainy day. He came back. He was debating. I heard in an interview he was debating whether to make Avatar or Alita Battle Angel. Those were his two options, and he chose Avatar because he thought it was a better story, and he was right to do so. But basically, work on the language of the Na'vi began in 2005. He began developing the screenplay and fictional universe in 2006. Fox kept wavering in its commitment to Avatar because of its painful experience with costs and overruns and delays in Titanic. Which is weird because it worked out very well for them.
Yeah. Like, it's worth it, the delays.
Yeah, even though Cameron rewrote the script to combine several characters together and offered to cut his fee in case the film flopped. In October 2006, Fox finally agreed to commit to making Avatar after Ingenious Media agreed to back the film, which reduced Fox's financial exposure. After Fox accepted Avatar, one skeptical Fox executive shook his head and told Cameron, "I don't know if we're crazier for letting you do this, or if you're crazier for thinking you can do this."
Wow.
Never doubt James Cameron. Never, ever bet against this man.
Yeah, he is pretty crazy with his ideas. He's a real visionary.
They said the same for Avatar. It's like, this is going to be a failure. Sorry, Titanic.
Yeah, the same for Titanic,
yeah, this is going to be a Titanic in terms of it's going to hit an iceberg. It's going to capsize. It's going to be, a failure. It writes itself, like we talked about in the Titanic review. And Avatar, obviously, this big, massive project. Again, it's going to fail. You're crazy for trying to do this. But again, if there's one man that can pull it off, it's James Cameron. And right now, I mean, not right now, but over the past few years, he's been in New Zealand making like 4 Avatar movies, which is going to cost like $1 billion. Let's talk about the actual movie, because of course its development.
Actually, I just realized we haven't actually said whether or not we like the movie.
Yeah, that's what we're going to say.
Oh, okay, cool, yeah.
So did you?
Well, I mean, yeah, this movie, it's not bad. Like, I think that's undeniable. Well, I don't know. It's very it's very predictable. The plot's pretty unimpressive, and I do think I actually found it dragged towards the end because like you get the initial kind of like exploration of the world, which is cool, and then it kind of just like then it becomes more plot focused as the film goes on and gets worse. I think it's still impressive, and I wouldn't say I disliked it, but I think I pretty much have the same opinion that almost everybody else has, which is, well, it's kind of cool to see, but it's not really very gripping in terms of the plot. And I'll also say, just for the record, that this is a film that clearly benefits from being watched like 3D, 4K, IMAX screen. I personally didn't watch it in a format that was akin to that experience. So certainly sat here watching it on my laptop from a very legal site didn't quite give me the same effect that I think enhances the experience of this film.
Maybe I'll see this one at the theatre,
I was thinking that too, actually, because as you well know, Luke, my fiancée is going to be here, and I was thinking how I kind of regret not having seen the original Avatar in the cinema, because it seems like if there's one film you want to see in the cinema, it would be these films, because they really kind of benefit from it.
And that's why it's going to, by the way, why these movies gross so much at the box office, because of that mentality. It's like, well, I might as well see it on the big screen, and Cameron understands that. And so many movies, like Marvel movies with their shitty CGI, don't get that.
Exactly.
They still gross so much money anyway, so who the fuck cares? Which is what's depressing about them, to be honest. For me, did I like Avatar? The honest trailers for Avatar, the new one, the alternate title was James and the Giant Preach, which I thought was very good, one of the best ones, funny. Because it's
basically woke Hollywood, which we hate.
Yeah, this was before all the right wingers knew the word woke. But they still complained about it, by the way, which we'll get into. They just didn't have that word that they love to say. But the thing is, its messaging is very good. I agree with all of its messaging. I like what it's saying, and I think it's very bold and brave for James Cameron to put some of the stuff he does in this movie, and for it to grow so much is fantastic. And it's so far away from Marvel, who would never be this brave. And I just compare it to Marvel because, of course, it's a similar thing of, set in this universe, quote unquote. And it's the movies which bring in, of course, a similar amount of money. The only comparable thing to Avatar over the last decade, apart from Star Wars, but of course that's in a whole different galaxy.
I
Anyway,
wonder what galaxy this Pandora is set in.
Well, it's definitely in the Milky Way
because of the fact that it takes them 5 years to travel.
Yeah, obviously it's Milky Way. Yeah, so it's not in the Andromeda galaxy. But no, that's the thing. This movie, I like its messaging. And I, having watched all this Marvel schlock and knowing how much, all of that generated at the box office, it's great to see a movie with these messages and see how much money it made. And it's like, wow, that's impressive. Looking back on it, it's different looking back on it now, considering all the movies that have come out in the last 12 years. It has aged better because of the movies that have grossed almost... Well, no, only one movie has matched it, which is Endgame, but obviously other Marvel movies have grossed a ton. And it's like, this movie has aged so much better because of the CGI movies, big action blockbuster movies that have preceded it. So it has aged better, but still, like you say, it's a very predictable movie. It's a very by-the-numbers movie. You can tell what's going to happen in this movie. I remember the first time I watched it, I must have been like 12 or 13, basically, a kid. And I got it very easily. And I to be fair, I think this is why it did well with foreign markets, because
that makes sense.
It's a very easy movie to grasp wherever you're from in the world. It's not complicated, and it is. That's the thing. It relies on these tropes that are so well worn, but they're well worn because they are successful, and people like to see them in movies. It's just very similar to Titanic in that regard. It's we'll get into the messaging, which I like, which I appreciate, but it is a very just simplistic movie at its heart, isn't it, in terms of the plot?
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and that, again, watching it just on a laptop, that's what you naturally focus more on.
Yeah.
Anyway, so let's get into nitpicks. Michael, how many do you have?
I've got one nitpick.
So do I. You go first.
Yes, so my one nitpick is basically just the fact that they are sending the Marines are sending out these people, and yet they seemingly don't have the ability to kill much of the wildlife. Because obviously I'm referring to the scene when they go out and they get confronted by the rhino and then the wolf thing, and they're just run away. And the first person the rhino thing, your armor can't penetrate it, and next thing run away. And it's hold on a minute. So they're sending these Marines out, and the Marines are just completely vulnerable to the first two random predatory or dangerous animals they see. Seems like this might be an example of a mismanaged military operation, and that's a nitpick because that doesn't happen in real life. But you get me.
Okay, so my nitpick is we are not only about 140 years off from visiting Pandora.
Because of when the film's set?
Yeah, the film is set, I think, in 2154. and we would not be able to visit a planet.
Why do you doubt Elon Musk so much?
I know. I don't know. Maybe because it's in 2010. He said he'd put a man on Mars by 2020, and he hasn't done that. So maybe that has something to do with it. No, that's the thing. It's space travel is very hard, and I don't think we'll progress enough in 150 years. Considering we haven't even gone to Mars yet to get to Pandora, and of course humans have been on Pandora for years apparently as well.
Yeah.
It should have been set, maybe another 50 to 100 years into the future at least. I think. Yeah.
So it would be interesting to see if there's like one film which completely actually underestimated us. But I feel like almost all sci-fi, it's the opposite. They always overestimate us.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, it's the same with Star Trek. It's like the day we can go at warp speed. It was in the Star Trek movie Star Trek First Contact. It was it was in 2068 or something, which is warp speed is like
faster than the speed of light.
Yeah, exactly, and that ain't happening, is it?
No, yeah.
In 2068. So yeah, it's an overestimation. Maybe 200 years it'll be possible, 250, but definitely not like 150 or 140. So, Michael, let's get into the plot. So, Avatar is set in the mid-22nd century when humans are colonizing Pandora. That's a key word there, colonizing. A lush, habitable moon of a gas giant in the Alpha Centauri star system in order to mine the valuable mineral unobtainium, which we shall get to later. The expansion of the mining colony threatens the continued existence of a local tribe of Na'vi, a humanoid species indigenous to Pandora. What are they called? The Eatakaya tribe, something like that.
Olamakaya, I think it is. Olamakaya.
Yeah. The title of the film refers to a genetically engineered Na'vi body operated from the brain of a remotely located human that is used to interact with the natives of Pandora. And yeah, again, it is a very simple plot. This guy who was broken, Jake Sully, and he's broken because of this cycle of war and violence perpetuated by humans, is shipped off to a planet that Earth needs resources from because of this cycle of exploitation and environmental destruction perpetuated by humans. Humans like him are fucked because of capitalism, imperialism, and he joins this alien race on Pandora, the Na'vi, who believe the exact opposite. And so Jake Sully fights back, saving the Na'vi and also saving himself. Again, from this capitalist, imperialist machine.
Yes. So, I love when white people save things.
Yeah. Again, it's the plot is very simple, isn't it?
Yeah. Like obviously it's like, it's like Captain Planet. That's what they say. But also, I'm thinking it's quite a common thing for films to have even like kid films to have like nature is good and the bad people want to destroy nature, and obviously there's plenty of villains who they like war, so lots of very very simplistic, I guess.
And that's why some conservatives got angry at it, because they were like, no, we like war and you're showing it's bad,
you're ruining war for everybody.
You are. It's like when The Big Short came out.
Oh yeah,
and investment banks were very mad that The Big Short CDOs, that they were selling CDOs to customers, and The Big Short comes out, and it's like, oh yeah, all these CDOs they're full of shit that these banks are selling, and the banks got
you
really
could say they're seedy.
Yes, and the banks got mad at The Big Short for that. It's like, you're ruining our business, and it's like, maybe business should be ruined then, if that's the case. And it's the same, with this movie. Maybe people should have a bad impression of colonizing and imperialism and war in general. But that's obviously what this movie says, and again, it's a message that I would agree with. But anyway, let's get into the script. So we'll start off with, of course, the key to Pandora being special is Earth has to be very unspecial, I guess. Earth has to be this dystopia.
I totally forgot when I started watching this film. I'd totally forgotten that you had this element of Earth being dystopian. I kind of thought Earth was largely ignored. I'd forgotten that.
There's a couple of shots. So Jake Sully is disabled, and who's our main character. And of course, what the first things we learn is this tech exists to help him recover from his spinal injury. But he can't because he doesn't have enough money.
Yes.
Again, Earth is colonizing planets thousands of miles away, but it's the same as it always is. Some poor, grunt, as he calls himself, can't get his injury fixed, which could be fixed. It could be fixed very easily, but he doesn't have the money. And again, it's just our our economic system just like extrapolated towards the future, even more so than it is today. The contrasts, the contradictions of what we can do compared to what we do to the average.
Yeah, it's the classic anti-Star Trek. Like, what if we have all of this technology, but turns out actually that the societal problems of greed and things like that are ultimately going to mean that even when we have the technology to do all these things, we're still not going to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And you could say again it's a dystopia, but that's where modern life, certainly in the last 10 years post Avatar, really, because of the failure to recover from the 2008 global financial crisis, like Western countries, certainly such as ours in America, have trended more so in that direction. Jake Sully, also, I like how he's been to Venezuela.
Yes.
Which of course has oil, and the head of security, Quaritch or whatever, he's been on tours in Nigeria,
yes,
which also has oil, isn't that right?
Yeah.
So again, they are now finding another Earth to rape and pillage. Basically, that's what they are doing, because they've done all these wars, grabbing all these resources in countries on Earth. So they're having to expand, and like humanity has broken someone like Jake Sully. He defends like this empire that has basically destroyed him, and you can make a lot of comparisons to Iraqi war veterans as well. So again, this is his character. It's very simple, and he is, you could say, because you could say he's an avatar for the audience, couldn't you?
That's you could say that.
Very one-dimensional, not well defined. Just what you
know
about.
He's also kind of an everyman.
Exactly. Yeah, what you know about him is his past experiences, and so he's the perfect character to be transformed and saved by this Na'vi civilization. So I like the start is good at defining things, Michael, to set up the messages in the movie.
Honestly, I mean, the start kind of makes me more interested in the world, like as in the Earth, like what's going on Earth, like what is the history of how. Like what kind of war went on in Nigeria? What was going on in Venezuela? I mean, we can imagine it, and I think maybe it was intentionally ambiguous.
I don't know if it's interesting, because that's what I come back to when
it's
Cameron's
kind of just obvious.
Yeah, kind of Cameron's predicting like the future based on what he's seen. It's like it's going to be like Iraq, It's
that makes sense.
It's going to be like Iraq, That's it. So
it does define Jake well in relation to that.
Yeah, no, exactly, it does, in terms of his backstory, how he fits into this world, and why he's the perfect character to be saved by the Na'vi. So we get to Pandora, and scientists, I like how they think they're different to the military people, because you got of course, in the end they turn out to be on the good guy's side, but I love the touch of Sigourney Weaver wearing the Stanford shirt. Look, she had a specially made T-shirt to fit her 9-foot avatar body.
That makes sense.
Stanford on it.
Of a name of American university.
Yeah, so she is showing off, basically, right? Look at me. I went to Stanford, and they are helping with oppressing the Na'vi. As the corporate guy says to Sigourney Weaver's character, you're part of this operation as well. And Cameron does not have any respect for these people. They at this stage of the movie, they don't care about the Na'vi. They only care about their ego and the science that they're working on. And they are basically tricking the Na'vi. That is their job, and deep down they know it, even if they'd like to say science.
Like Lawrence of Arabia, deep down he knew he was tricking them about colonialism, and he knew the government was going to betray them.
Well, that's kind of ambiguous, isn't it? Whether he knew deep down,
okay.
Because he would be like, no, he wanted to take Damascus. He wanted to unite the Arab world. And that is something that
he was more sincere.
He ultimately, maybe he knew, this ain't gonna work, but at least he wanted to, he didn't have an ulterior motive, or an ulterior ambition, really. These people's ambitions are to not respect the Na'vi, just experiment and find things out about Pandora, etc. Anyway, unobtainium. Now, Michael, unobtainium.
Yes.
Do you like that word, unobtainium?
Well, it is an interesting thing, because it is sometimes obviously people can come up with unintelligent names. So people can, when you think about it, a lot of names actually, technically speaking, are kind of dumb. Iguanodon just means iguana tooth, and it's oh, well done, scientists, good one. But I would agree that it is still definitely a very dumb name.
Here's the thing, I'm okay with it, kind of. This unobtainium, of course, that's what they're after in Avatar. It costs 20 million a kilo. Of course, it is a stupid name, but the point is, it doesn't matter what it is. It's just another resource for humans to grab. Like, it doesn't matter what it can do. It's just something that humanity apparently needs, and this is what humanity, and specifically America, does. They go and get
the Thneed in the Lorax.
Yeah, they go and get resources from other, countries and destroy communities or indeed entire nations to do it. And then they move on to the next valuable resource that they really need. So it doesn't really matter. It's just, okay, that's valuable. Yeah. It can be called unobtainium. It doesn't matter. And that is the point. So
I quite like it. So it's it's an archetype. It's an archetype for kind of precious resources.
Yeah. And again, you're not meant to really think about it. And that's the point. It doesn't really matter. And so Giovanni Ribisi, again, the head corporate guy in this incredible Pandora world, again, what is he doing when we first see him?
Is he playing golf?
Yeah. And again, it's a nice little touch from Cameron, like how Sigourney Weaver has a Stanford shirt for her 9-foot Avatar body. And again, this guy, you see him, what do you see him do? He's putting. And of course, the stats about golf courses and how they destroy the environment. So, rich people can hit a few golf balls around and it's just a total waste of land, essentially. So, again, Cameron knows what he's doing. He's those little touches. He's good with that. So anyway, what is its core message?
I think its core message has to be, obviously you could say very generally, you could say it's more about like capitalism, but I think specifically it's about colonialism.
Yes,
like taking people's resources.
Yeah, exactly. So this, I think it's either colonialism or why the environment should be protected. Basically, it's a pro-environment film. And of course, they can be sometimes the same thing, sometimes not. But anyway, so imperialism, colonialism, whatever, that is a key foundation, a pillar of this movie. And the humans, of course, are here on Pandora to do imperialism. And again, that's pretty, just on the face of it, because it's very obvious, of course, that's literally like what the whole movie is. And on the face of it, that's pretty bold, really, to do a movie about how America are bad for doing imperialism, and Cameron goes into it and he says Avatar is a science fiction retelling of the history of North and South America in the early colonial period. Avatar very pointedly referred to the colonial period in the Americas with all its conflict and bloodshed between the military aggressors from Europe and the indigenous peoples. Europe equals Earth. The Native Americans are the Na'vi. It's not meant to be subtle. This is what Cameron does. He makes movies that aren't subtle, so the average moviegoer can get it, and Cameron, that's what Cameron does. And again, like it's very simple. Adam Cohen of the New York Times stated the film is firmly in the anti-imperialist canon, a 22nd century version of the American colonists versus the British, India versus the Raj, or Latin America versus United Fruit. Commentators saw the film as a message of support for the struggles of native people today. Evo Morales, the first indigenous president of Bolivia, praised Avatar as well for its profound show of resistance to capitalism and the struggle for the defense of nature. Others compared the human invaders with NATO in Iraq or Israel in Palestine. Palestinian activists apparently painted themselves blue and dressed like the Na'vi during a protest.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yes. That's the thing. Cameron, I don't think would be so controversial that to say, it's based on like Israel and Palestine, but that's why he said it's based on history.
That's the thing. I was kind of thinking that because you said like it's ballsy. I mean, the thing is, it's worth noting like even like Pocahontas, while there were problems with it, definitely was about colonialism and declared colonialism to be bad.
But Pocahontas said like both sides were bad.
Yeah. Which I suppose, so I suppose that's different. Yeah, because obviously, like there have been lots of films about colonialism, but I think
has there been any like a big blockbuster movie that unashamedly says like colonialism is bad? Do you ever get that like from Marvel? Or I mean, of course you kind of get it in Black Panther, which is again it's like the one Marvel movie I highlight, which I'm like, okay, that tries to do something interesting, but you wouldn't get it from any of the others. Thor Ragnarok like touches it a tiny bit. But that's why it's impressive, because it's like unashamedly like, and I know like it's about history, that's what Cameron says. But like Evo Morales in Bolivia liked it, and so did like Palestinian people. Like I think Cameron could probably recognize the parallels with imperialism today, but he just wouldn't want to say it because that would be very controversial.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree with that. Like I think ultimately, it's because I do think it's interesting that obviously something that makes it more interesting, I think, is the fact that this stuff is going on today. Because to be honest, like, I'm trying to think of like, I can't really think of any mainstream film that's been specifically about historical colonialism in a negative light. But
yeah,
also
a
at the same
massive
time,
blockbuster. Yeah.
yeah, at the same time, I think it's not that. I wouldn't say it's that brave to present that message, because I think a lot of people, most people don't really care about defending colonialism. I think it could be novel, but yeah.
But it's controversial though. That's the thing. Like, if it's not brave, like, why is Avatar like one of the only movies that have done it? Like, would fucking Marvel do something like that? No, they'd have the fucking Falcon saying, at the end, "Oh, Senator, you need to do better," like he did in, what was it, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which was a famous viral clip which showed the politics that Marvel tries to present. And yeah, I'm just focusing on Marvel because it's the
yeah. But no, yeah, I mean, yeah, what I want to say is, like, obviously the thing is, I agree with you that this film definitely applies as much, if not more so, to contemporary examples of, I guess, what people call neo-colonialism.
Yeah.
As much, yeah, if not more, than it applies to historical. I mean, apart from anything else, just because this is set in the future, so it's obviously in that sense a lot more like, because I mean, this film, like, when I'm watching it, the fact that it, like, the idea of it being about Native Americans, I feel like I'm kind of like, well, that's actually a bit more boring.
Like Israel Palestine, he'll shy away from because it's not really to do with the environment, but certainly any environmental struggle, he won't shy away from, which we'll get onto later. But anyway, let's talk about the Na'vi, Michael, because or the Avatar body, and how Jake Sully becomes a Na'vi. It's a pretty cool concept, and I think it's handled realistically. As dumb as that sounds to say, like, it's like, oh, I like how, okay, when you go to sleep in the Na'vi body, you wake up in the human body. I think that works, and yeah, their design as well. They're 10-foot tall, blue-skinned humanoids, and who look like cat people. And
yes,
obviously Cameron spent a while designing them. And what do you think of the Na'vi's look? Do you think it's sexy, Michael, like many people apparently did?
Yeah, I do think it's sexy. You know what, Luke? I think it's very sexy. Because obviously, if, for example, the aliens looked ugly or were like so strange looking that are almost like beyond our comprehension in terms of how weird they looked, that would have then had to make the film about something else, because it would have been like,
yes,
yeah. So I think it makes sense, therefore, to have them basically look like sexy people.
Sexy blue Native American cat people who are 9 feet tall.
I will say, I don't know if you noticed, but again, this is also from the same source I got my Lord of the Rings fact, but James Cameron was absolutely insistent that the Na'vi have breasts. That was another little fact I heard. I will say, with that in mind, like, he could have given them really big boobs, because how like
Michael, we'll get into your fantasies another time.
Okay, right? Good. So
Jake Sully, the point is, he is free, in this Avatar body, right? Again, it's why he was disabled. It's very literal symbolism, he's trapped in this human body, but when he's with, the Na'vi in this Avatar body, he's free. Yeah, and of course, how he can escape from humanity and all the problems with it. So yeah, again, it's very simple symbolism. While escorting the avatars of Grace and Dr. Norm Spellman, Jake's avatar is attacked by Pandora wildlife, and he flees into the forest, where he's rescued by female Na'vi Neytiri. Witnessing an auspicious sign, she takes him to her clan. So the Na'vi, their language, Michael.
Yes, it was Na'vi-ish.
How many words do you think are in the Na'vi language, in the Na'vi lexicon, that were created for this movie?
Well, I'm just trying to think about how many words, like, one. I would say that they probably want it to be quite functional as a language, and I would think you probably need, let's say, 1,000 to 1,500 words for it to be functional. Really?
1,000, yeah. 1,000 with 30 added by Cameron. So.
30 added by Cameron.
Yeah, okay. The tongue's phonemes include ejective consonants that are found in Amharic.
Okay. I know what ejective means. It means like when you go like...
and by the way, the music in Avatar is Native American music too, which is just kind of westernized to make it seem better. Which is kind of... there was a good video from Sideways saying...
I feel like you might be about to reference this, so I want to jump in there first. There's a scene in the Disney movie Brother Bear where it plays some music that's supposed to be Native American, and it's actually Bulgarian. And like the reason they did it is because they're like, oh, it sounds like how they talk. But like, what's your Sideways video?
No, it was saying a similar thing.
Yeah.
How Cameron wanted to create a unique sound for Avatar, but he heard the sound, he didn't like the unique sound. And so they just went with standard Native American music, which is like or music that sounded Native American, which is very ironic, of course.
Yeah.
Given obviously the like, oh yeah, anti-colonialism kind of message, but no, we're just going to paste over this music we're trying to create with some of our music, which will be acceptable to Western audiences. Yeah. Anyway, so capitalism, Michael. So that's what we're going to talk about next. Even though the word capitalism is never said in this movie, of course.
Yes.
Anyway, so Neytiri's mother, Moat, as the spiritual leader of the clan, orders her daughter to initiate Jake into their society. So, why do they initiate Jake? Because, Jake Sully is a baby. Like, that's essentially why he is picked. Not the key thing is he can be deprogrammed because he has not benefited from the imperialism of humanity. His cup is empty, as he says. He is this blank canvas. So that's why he can be initiated. And it's why Neytiri's mother thinks that his insanity can be cured. Because, again, he is ready to drop all his pre-existing notions about how someone would live. Because, he's all these pre-existing notions that have guided his life when he's been a human have let him down, basically. And again, insanity to the Na'vi is, how humans live like they do. They just keep pillaging until there is nothing left.
Yes, it's like your favorite philosopher once said, it is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society.
And who was that?
I actually don't know. It's from the beginning of this documentary I saw one time that was actually like a conspiracy theory documentary, but I remembered that quote. It was from somebody though, it wasn't just by the conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, and this is why I specifically think this line is a critique of capitalism.
Yeah.
Because, it's like what you're doing, what we're doing to Earth right now. Like, and when we have taken, everything, we take this mentality to Pandora. And, humanity is basically turning Pandora into their own dead world. And why? What is the benefit? What is the benefit of doing that to humanity? Well, there is no benefit to humanity. It would be better for humanity if resource extraction and basically capitalism, wasn't as it was basically toned down. Like, you turn down the dial, that would be better. But again, it's because capitalism requires, a profit motive. That's of course the thing that matters the most. So, if you're in the system, this capitalist system, well, you're just going to keep extracting resources, pumping the air full of CO2, and that long term is going to hurt humanity. Everyone knows that, but nobody's obviously stopping that. And obviously that seems insane, right? Like, it's genuinely, when you step back, you can see why, like, the Na'vi would see that's insane. You're literally killing yourself. You're killing your own planet, and everybody knows it. And for what?
Yeah, like the fact that what certain people might think is normal, to other people they'd be like, oh, that's crazy. Like, I've always thought that about, like, the fact that if you told like Bronze Age person who medieval who really struggles to kind of make ends meet, and you told them about all of the technology we have as a society, and they'd be like, wow, that must be incredible. Like, you must use all of that technology to solve all of these problems, because they're starving because they don't have any technology, and then they find out about all the technology we have. But no, we'd be like, actually no, we just use it so that the shareholders and the super rich can increase their profits, and meanwhile other people can't afford to feed their heat their homes.
Yeah, and this is quite timely because there was news today about a new fusion reactor that could.
Yes.
Tell us about this, Michael.
Well, I just know that obviously, fusion. It's the thing that nerds like to talk about, and that there's been some kind of advancement with it.
Yeah, basically unlimited power.
Yeah, because it's how the sun works.
Yeah, unlimited energy. So we can move to clean energy, and we can have constant renewable energy, and that's great. But if a sane Earth would pour all its resources into getting that up and running as quickly as possible, but obviously that ain't going to happen, is it? So we're going to stick with fossil fuels, pumping shit into the air for the next few decades, I imagine, at least. And yeah, again, it's for the Na'vi, they'd look at that and say, well, that's stupid. What the hell are you doing to your planet? And yeah, they would kind of be right. And again, what drives that more than anything is capitalism and the profit motive. Because who cares about the long-term future? It's all about the next quarterly earnings, which is exactly what the fucking corporate guy says. What does he say? It's bad PR is bad.
Yes. But what's worse is shareholders losing money.
Yeah, bad press it ain't great, but a bad quarterly statement is worse. So that's what he says, obviously. And that's after Colonel Miles Quaritch, which is a word name, honestly. Cameron should have made that a lot simpler. Head of the RDA security force, again, nothing to do with America, RDA, Again,
Yes.
separate thing. Promises Jake the company will restore his legs if he can provide info about the Na'vi and their gathering place, the giant home tree, which is under a rich deposit of obtanium or over
Unobtainium.
Yeah,
Soon to be obtanium.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so that's when the corporate guy Giovanni Ribisi says that. And so yeah, again, it's I don't know if Cameron is implicitly anti-capitalist, but it feels like certainly from this part of the movie, it is critiquing that. For
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, it's like how stupid does it look that our world runs on quarterly statements? Like it's a stupid thing that is our top priority. Yeah, the Avatar program again is just essentially PR for people back on Earth, so they're happy with what we're doing because we're trying to connect with them, we're trying to learn from them, etc. So that makes it acceptable to people on Earth as well, which is a nice touch as well. Because you do wonder, what is the function of this Avatar program? Well, that's it. It's just for PR, right? Which again makes complete sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. Because I like that. I mean, it's kind of like obviously there's like a whole thing people talk about where kind of like giving aid to kind of I guess developing countries is an issue, and that it can often be used to whitewash a lot of what's going on, and obviously ignore the reality of sometimes why these countries have these issues with development. So yeah, like, and this is kind of a similar thing there of whitewashing over things, making things look better by having these kind of PR. Yeah, you said it already, PR. Yeah, and that is very accurate. I like it.
Yeah, again, so James Cameron knows what he's doing. Like these little touches, it's great. Like the overall story is simple, but everything around it, particularly involving the messaging, is great, really. So Pandora now, Michael. This is the other great thing about the movie, which is separate to the plot.
Yes.
The world, Pandora, a place of flying mountains, a world full of magical creatures, breathtaking views, where everything is connected to each other. And this is where the special effects shine, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. The lead visual effects company was based in Wellington, and at one point employed 900 people to work on the film.
Well, I believe that would have been Weta Studios.
Yes, good. That's good. Yeah, well done.
Yes, I actually I wrote something about them for my masters.
Of course you did. Yes.
Yes, 'cause I'm a nerd.
Creating the Na'vi characters and the virtual world of Pandora required over a petabyte of digital storage.
So that's like a terabyte is because het means like 6, right?
Peta.
Oh, peta. Oh, I don't. Oh, so that's like 5. Like penta, because I would assume like a terabyte is 3.
Yes, you would. Correct,
so then obviously, because then I guess there'd be like a quarabyte or something. So then
but it's 1,000 times each. Like
so you would need so I've got a 1 terabyte memory kind of external hard drive. You would need 10,000 of those, which is kind of not surprising.
No, so I think it's
sorry,
more.
No, you just need 100. Yeah, it makes sense actually.
No, it's even more because a quadribyte would be 1,000.
Oh, so you'd need 1 million, wouldn't you?
Yeah, exactly. See, you'd need a million tetrabytes or whatever. So, yeah. Each minute of the final footage for Avatar occupies 17.28 gigabytes of storage. Each minute.
Each minute, 7.28 gigabytes. Yeah, okay, that's wild.
Yeah. It would often take the computer several hours to render a single frame of the film.
Tell you what, like how sometimes I've got to render the podcast.
Yes,
it's a good thing that we don't, we're not on Avatar's level.
I know that. Yeah, Cameron, and that's the thing. Obviously, it uses CGI to create this Pandora world, and it's so impressive. But that's the thing. It's fine when and this is why people are excited for Way of Water, because Cameron gets the most out of CGI. He doesn't just use it to like paper over the cracks, and it's like, oh yeah, we can put CGI in there, and like they scrape by and just make it barely acceptable, like the viewing public, again, like Marvel. Like he really cares, and he really makes sure the CGI is as good as it possibly can be, and that is so refreshing, and it's so nice to see. And again, he's going to do it for all the Avatar movies. Like he takes care. People like that, and that's why people and because you can see the results. Like if Pandora was made by Marvel, no way people are raving about Pandora. No way people are depressed after seeing this movie because they can never visit Pandora like some people were after seeing Avatar.
I agree. It's good that people are depressed. I think like I agree with you. Like, because ultimately, sometimes I like to be one of those people who's kind of like, well, what is it George Lucas said? A special effect without a good story isn't, it ain't shit. That's what he said. But no, like, and I like to be one of those people who sometimes like, well, like special effects aren't the most important thing. You can have like really entertaining movies that still have bad CGI. I mean, to an extent, you could say like the CGI in Lord of the Rings, for example, doesn't always hold up. But I think like there is also that element in which when someone does appreciate that stuff, you've got to you got to show them respect.
Yeah, like it's obviously CGI isn't the most important thing. Again, that is definitely the case, and the story is the key. But the CGI, when it's as good as it ever is going to be, you got to just say, "Wow, that's impressive." It is part of movie making. It is part of it, and if you maximise that, then fair play. That's great.
Yeah,
you can see that with Pandora. Anyway, so and of course with the Na'vi characters too. With the CGI motion capture. So the Na'vi philosophy now, Michael. So we'll talk about this because again, this is key. They have this mantra, of a network of energy flows through all living things, which is actually turns out to be true. Like it's not just like a mantra.
Yeah, it's not like a religion. It's just reality.
Yeah, and life is borrowed. Yeah, again, it really is Native American in how the Na'vi see everything, isn't it? Like, and again, Cameron said, no subtlety is the point. Which is, again, he's clear. He doesn't want things to be complicated, which is why a child could get it very easily. This is from Wiki. Ozipov said the civilized humans turn out as primitive, jaded, and increasingly greedy, cynical, and brutal, traits only amplified by their machinery, while the monkey aliens emerge as noble, kind, wise, sensitive, and humane. We, along with the Avatar hero, are now faced with an uncomfortable yet irresistible choice between the two races and the two worldviews. Again, like one worldview is so much better than the other, and again, it's very like, oh look, these native people, they truly understand the world, and that is why, of course, this has fallen into like tropes. It definitely uses tropes, this movie, and these tropes sometimes are negative, which is of course the noble savage trope, which is what David Brooks of the New York Times said. He said, Avatar creates a sort of two-edged cultural imperialism, an offensive cultural stereotype that white people are rationalist and technocratic, while colonial victims are spiritual and athletic, and that literacy is the path to grace. A review in the Irish Independent found the film to contrast a mix of New Age environmentalism and the myth of the noble savage with the corruption of the civilized white man.
It reminds you of the episode of Malcolm in the Middle where he accidentally stumbles upon a totem pole, and then like he's like obsessed over it having some kind of meaning, and then at the end the Native American shows up and like who owns it, and he's like, you have to tell me what it means, and he's like, I just use it as a car stop. Listen, buddy, I'm a Baptist. I don't dance with the wolves and sing and blah blah blah. And he's like, I'm tired of all these jumped up white boys trying to get me to solve their spiritual crises. But yeah, like that's the thing. Like obviously, like the idea of like Native Americans as like having this magical connection to the world is, I guess you could say, even perhaps a bit dehumanizing, and it almost presents them as like magical, mystical creatures. You could say this film kind of leans into that.
Well, that's why, people said it's offensive. It's a trope. It's a well-worn trope. Cameron acknowledged parallels with the idea of the noble savage as well. But the thing is, tropes do exist for a reason. These Native Americans, like, they did actually believe a lot of this stuff, and the white people did believe something different. So again, that's why I would say it's just tiresome to see it play out again and again, even if it makes for like a good movie. It's this kind of the same deal with the Titanic here. A movie with like classic tropes, but it appeals to people as it's simple, and it's the same thing here. It's like a simple, like universal truth of like, oh wow, these people are so much better than us. And you mentioned Malcolm in the Middle. That's a good way to show like, oh yeah, these people aren't just caricatures. That they are humans who aren't that different.
One of the things I found interesting, which is very common to colonialism, is the whole like divide and conquer. Different sides, being against each other, and obviously everybody knows that like Native American tribes for other Native American tribes and things like that. And that is interestingly something that's missing from this, which I think is, again, it would have made the film way more complicated geopolitically to have that thing going on. But I think you could say that it does make the film a less accurate depiction of colonialism in terms of one of its main features, and also again, kind of adds that idea of not recognizing, I guess, the kind of reality of what these civilizations were like. And also, I think the other thing actually I want to say about Noble Savage thing is you could say it's kind of, and I'm going to use the term problematic, in that by presenting kind of groups that were victims of colonialism as kind of perfect and faultless, it almost then creates the idea that that is like the standard for being a victim of colonialism. And like the thing is, there are obviously loads of frankly idiots, but so like people who, like, for example, they watch Pocahontas and they think, oh, it made Pocahontas an best because obviously there's complexity there, but they watch some film that shows like the Native Americans as kind of perfect, wonderful people walking with nature, and then they like, hey, did you know that actually they fought each other and they had wars and stuff? So turns out the woke media has been lying to you.
Yeah. It sets them up to fail, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so
Whereas if you acknowledge like the reality of them having flaws.
Yeah. Again, that is a good point. So maybe you should have shown that they have flaws in this movie as well. But yeah, again, it's just like it's Cameron. He is trying to make it as simple as possible, and this again is using simple tropes, which again are played out and perhaps offensive if you dig a little deeper. Anyway, so Jake is being trained by Neytiri to become a member of the Na'vi. Again, it's a predictable story. He doesn't insert himself like Dances of Wolves or Lawrence of Arabia, since he was chosen by the natives. But yeah, again, it's like predictable. This is what's going to happen. He flies out on that dinosaur and passes that test again.
Yeah, some might say like it's a bit kind of ridiculous that obviously like he just like kind of does this thing pretty easily quite early on.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Like he's trained for a bit, so I don't know. Like, but the point is, it's just typical plot points that are hit again and again in this movie, and the incredible design of Pandora in those flying scenes actually, keeps you invested. That's the thing. That's what Cameron focuses on much more than the story, and you can feel the excitement of it, and it's great, to see those scenes of him like flying around, even if it is predictable from a plot point. And again, I come back to what the generals say, like out there it's worse than hell, which is of course,
and it's compared to reality. Yeah, that is funny.
So now we get to the point again where Jake is kind of being, torn apart really between like what is the true world, which world is he actually from? Again, it's just very typical.
He's like, I feel like sometimes out there is reality and in here is the dream, or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's the Matrix, isn't it? So again, he does take the blue pill, if you will. Does Jake, because the Avatar are blue, or the Na'vi are blue.
Oh yeah,
so,
he does.
Yeah, he takes the blue pill. But yeah, he's he's drawn to this culture he's fighting against, and like Dances of Wolves and Lawrence of Arabia, and this is from Cameron, I think, again, where an outsider encounters and immerses themselves into a foreign culture and then ultimately joins that group to fight other outsiders. It's a bit different than those again, because he is kind of chosen rather than they insert themselves into those tribes. But yeah, again, he's going native, especially as he becomes a fully integrated man of the tribe and marries or mates, I guess, with Neytiri. He doesn't marry her yet, does he?
Yeah. Sex before marriage. These savages, man. They need to be taught some good old-fashioned Christian ethics.
Yeah, I do. Again, of course, when you watch the movie for the first time, you can absolutely tell, even as a kid, where this is going. So, again, we're harping on about how simple it is, but it really that's all you can say.
Yeah, you also get like kind of like trope of betrayal, which I forgot was in this, which is like, again, like that kind of idea of like, you betrayed us, is very kind of standard melodrama.
Let's get into another trope that Cameron loves, which is the love story. Between Jake and Neytiri, Cameron applied a star-crossed love theme, which he said was in the tradition of Romeo and Juliet.
Yes.
He acknowledged its similarity to the pairing of Jack and Rose from his film Titanic. He's just like, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Really.
Yeah.
An interviewer stated both couples come from radically different cultures and are contemptuous of their relationship and are forced to choose sides between the competing communities. Cameron describes Neytiri as his Pocahontas, saying that his plotline followed the historical story of a white outsider who falls in love with the chief's daughter, who becomes his guide to the tribe and to their special bond with nature. Again, it's different to the actual Pocahontas movie, because John Smith doesn't fight the English, which would again be a very different ending. If he joined them and killed everyone like fucking Jake Sully does. So it's better. So it's
I guess it shows that Pocahontas didn't have her. She wasn't as good in bed as Neytiri is.
I knew you were going to say that, but
she should have been sexier, and then the Native Americans would still be here.
Pocahontas should have been 9 foot and blue. And
yes.
that would have convinced John Smith to, kill all the English people. But yeah, I think obviously, it's again using tropes. In terms of the actual love story, it's not that great, because you don't really see why they fall in love with each other, because they just spend time with each other. Like the key thing in Titanic is like Rose yearns for a different life, and like Jack is her manic pixie dream boy.
Yes.
There's
no reason for Neytiri to like him, really.
Exactly. Yeah, there's no reason for Neytiri to like him, and there's no real reason for Jake to like her either, beyond he just finds her like attractive. You know?
Yeah. Like, I mean, I guess you could say, like, for Jake, like, she represents, like, his escape from, like, like,
yeah,
like,
but that has
also
to
his
be.
acceptance into this society.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, you'd say there has to be something more there for it to be like love. And again,
Yeah.
we don't know why she falls in love with him, really. To be honest, again, it's not as good as Titanic in terms of a love story.
Like the motivation.
Yeah, again, but there's so much more going on in this movie. It'd be hard to define that as well.
Yeah.
And of course, who can forget the where they can join their tails together, whatever they are, their tails.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Did you like that, Michael?
I achieved climax watching it. I had to replay that scene a few times. No, yeah, I mean, it is interesting. It does kind of make me think about the scene in Futurama where Fry he gets married to a mermaid, and then they're like about to have sex, and he's like, "So what happens now?" And she's like, "Well, I lay my eggs, and then I leave, and you fertilize them with your seed." And then he like starts running away because he realizes that like, and I'm kind of like in my head, I'm like, so how does the mechanics of banging work in relation to enjoying it?
Well, I imagine it's just the same as humanity, but that's just another connection. It's like instead it was like it's a fucking literal connection rather than just like a
just willy and vagina or butthole if you're gay.
Okay, that's great.
You want to be heteronormative.
Yeah, or you missed out the lesbians there. To be honest,
do the Na'vi have gay people?
I mean, I don't know. You'd have to ask James Cameron, right? So, again, I just find it so funny. People really found that attractive. But whatever, man. Hey, whatever you like. So, the environment now, Michael. We're going to talk about that. So, Jake attempts to disable a bulldozer which is threatening a sacred Na'vi site. Administrator Parker Selfridge, who's Giovanni Ribisi's character, orders Home Tree to be destroyed. Despite Grace's argument that destroying Home Tree could damage Pandora's biological neural network, Selfridge gives Jake and Grace only 1 hour to convince the Na'vi to evacuate. So obviously the whole big plot of Avatar, or the plot point, is Home Tree. Like that's what they all want to go after. Home Tree, do the humans. A symbol of the natural world on Pandora. And obviously a symbol of all that's special to the Na'vi. And it's of course not hard to see the environmental message, is it? Avatar has been called, without a doubt, the most epic piece of environmental advocacy ever captured on celluloid. The film hits all the important environmental talking points: virgin rainforests threatened by wanton exploitation, indigenous peoples who have much to teach the developed world, a planet which functions as a collective, interconnected, Gaia-istic organism.
Gaia-istic? Oh, I think I know what that means.
Gaia. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's actually pronounced Gaia, and
that would make sense.
She's the Greek god of the earth.
Yes. Yeah, and evil corporate interests that are trying to destroy it all. Again, that sums it up well. Yeah. It is the most epic piece of environmental advocacy ever captured on film. Yes, absolutely. And then this is what Cameron, I think, cares about most. He spoke, extensively with the media about the film's environmental message, saying he envisioned Avatar as a broader metaphor of how we treat the natural world. He said that he created Pandora as a fictionalized fantasy version of what our world was like before we started to pave it and build malls and shopping centres. So it's really an evocation of the world we used to have. He told Charlie Rose that we are going to go through a lot of pain and heartache if we don't acknowledge our stewardship and responsibilities to nature. Commentators connected the film story to the endangerment of biodiversity in Amazon rainforests of Brazil by dam construction, logging, mining, and clearing for agriculture. Yeah, there's more examples, of course, of it, but yeah, it's so obvious. Of course, this is what Cameron cares most about, because sometimes destroying nature is imperialism, and sometimes it isn't. Depends on who lives there. But it's always anti-environment. Obviously, it is like destroying trees and for like cattle or whatever, which is what is happening in Brazil. And yeah, he's a Hollywood live who cares about that, I think, most of all. So. Yeah, and again,
he doesn't even realize that it's been snowing recently.
he doesn't. No, he doesn't. That's the thing. All of that, environmental shit, that right there is, it's good to see again. Like, who else? What are other movies which are big blockbusters come close to doing what Cameron's done here?
Have you ever heard of Don't Look Up? That's not big. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I feel like there must be. I mean, obviously the thing is like there's like kids shows like Captain Planet and things like that. And I know there are like there's also an old British TV show called The Animals of Farthing Wood. Have you ever heard of that?
So again, I said which big blockbusters?
I know. I'm sorry. I know. Yeah.
But
I guess what I'm saying is so there aren't any blockbusters.
Again, that's the thing. It's such a simple movie, but you have to admire what Cameron's putting in this movie. Like he is just like, again, it's James and the Giant preach. Like he's preaching. And that's fine with having messages and themes in your movie, as long as, of course, the story's good and people are engaged. Which, people are engaged. I'm not sure the story's good, but again, people like the movie, so whatever. He just went for it. Like, there's no holding back. Like, there's no subtlety. And sometimes you just have to say, hey, that's good, because if you want to get your message across, the best way is not to be subtle. And you could argue, well, that means the art is bad if you're not being subtle. But that's the age-old debate. And if Cameron's just like, this is what this movie is about, and I'm giving a middle finger to anyone who disagrees with it, or who, there is something to be in mind about that in some ways, isn't there?
Yeah, I do agree. Like, obviously, like, the fact the film is so, obvious, it almost makes it more, like, I guess, thematic when it's, like, so obviously focused on it. I agree with the message as well, which is good. I mean, you could say, for example, like, that, there's probably is a middle ground. Like, I don't know if I really want to live in a completely primitivist society. I don't know if I want to embrace monkey.
Yeah, obviously that is an issue. But he's just saying, I think, basically we should respect the natural world more. I mean, he's not necessarily saying, we have to live like the Na'vi. Let's just respect the natural world more, please. That's what he's asking for. Also, it's about motherhood. As well, because of there's a line about Mother Nature when Jake is talking to the Tree of Souls or whatever. And Cameron, again, all his movies, he says, are about motherhood. And that's how is this movie about motherhood? Well, it's about protecting Mother Nature and Mother Nature striking back at the end of the movie, of course. So there you go. And it's just pure propaganda, isn't it? For like his political views. But hey, those political views are good. And again, there is just an admiration for just being so bold with it. When no one else will, like, you get a lot of movies that say, or pieces of art that say, like, racism is bad, which is again something I agree with. But there's no there's nothing like this really, and that's what Avatar: Way of Water will be like as well. I'm guessing,
like protecting the oceans instead of the forests.
Again, protecting the oceans, So an article in the National Review concluded that by resorting to technology for educating viewers of the technology-endangered world of Pandora, the film showcases the contradictions of organic liberalism. So that was from the National Review, and I love this because it's this dumb conservative talking point that advanced tech must mean anti-environment. And again, I don't think Cameron is saying that. He's just saying we should respect nature. He's not, there's not a speech by Jake Sully saying, "Oh, all these machines and tech, away from these computer screens. That's where I want to be." It's not really like that. And I just in general, I'll say this: advanced tech doesn't mean being anti-environment. It's like how conservatives. Really, I remember I saw this picture of this guy who was a conservative on Twitter. He posted an aerial shot of New York City, and it's like, how can liberal people say, how can liberal people talk about destroying the environment when they all live here? There's a shot of New York City, and with all its concrete and so on. But that's the thing. That's not anti-environment, because it's an incredibly efficient way at housing people.
Yes.
If everyone had a garden and like a massive house basically. Like they do in the suburbs, well, the transport costs, would soar. So more pollution, more energy is being wasted. If everyone lives in the same area, that's a lot more efficient, and your carbon footprint is a lot lower.
It's kind of weird because most, I'd say, environmentalists would be pretty into the idea of high-speed railways, and it's I think someone could make an argument that that's quite technological. I saw I've noticed every now and then the one Twitter thing that I always get roped into and then regret it afterwards is talking to climate change deniers. And the last one I spoke to is someone who was there was a nature documentary where Stephen Fry was saying don't destroy the environment, and someone's like, how ironic that Stephen Fry flies all around the world and then tells us we're not allowed to. And I was like, when did he say you're not allowed to fly? It's possible to care about the environment and still say that you should be able to do, nice, fun things like travel the world. It's just, maybe, also care about forests and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the only way to fix the environmental issues is by voting for politicians. Yeah, because you can't do anything on your own. I mean, that's just stupid. Again. That's it. Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. They seem to
they literally think they take it personal. People who hate environmental activists, they think it's you don't want me to live a fun life. It's like, I don't think they care one way or the other.
So let's talk about anti-militarism now, Michael. So
Yes.
obviously that's another central point of this movie. The humans are gearing up for war. They want to take home tree. And Jake, says, what does he say? If people are sitting on shit you want, make them the enemy. And that has to be a reference to the Iraq War. There is also a reference to a line from Colonel Quaritch or whatever. We will fight terror with terror.
Yes.
And we need a preemptive strike, which again is very on the nose. But hey, again, Cameron, he doesn't want to be subtle. So again, that's definitely the case there as well. And yeah, Cameron states that Avatar is very much a political film, obviously, and added, this movie reflects that we are living through war. There are boots on the ground troops who I personally believe were sent there under false pretenses, so I hope this will be part of opening our eyes. So again, it's a propaganda movie. He wants to open people's eyes. War is bad, which is, again, true. And he confirmed that the Iraq stuff and the Vietnam stuff is largely there by design. Commenting on the term shock and awe in the film, because that's what, obviously, the humans are going to do to the Na'vi at the end of the movie. Cameron said, we know what it feels like to launch the missiles. We don't know what it feels like for them to land on our home soil, not in America. So again, he's against the Middle East wars, against Vietnam, which will lead into anti-Americanism soon, which we'll talk about.
Yes.
But basically, he's very much against the military, going over and creating war, which is very basic and simple. But
yeah. You know what? Actually, this is. I've been meaning to bring this up for a while, and I've not quite worked out when. Basically, the one thing I did want to talk about, and this is more plot related than message related, but it's plot related to this thing, which is I do think it was interesting, and maybe a bad thing that like it doesn't at all actually address any efforts to negotiate with the Na'vi. Like it seemed a bit weird because it's like obviously Jake. Like the whole time,
that was already basically destroyed when the school was shot.
Yeah, but like, I don't know. I was thinking to myself, like, it seems a bit funny that ultimately, like, that was the reason he was sent there, and then he doesn't actually.
Well, yeah, again, it's just for PR, isn't it? Like, they don't actually think. That's the thing. Jake gives that line about they're not going to move, and deep down, maybe like Giovanni Ribisi knew that. And
I think that makes sense.
But you have to see it play out before you can make the final call, essentially. So, let's talk about 9/11 and Home Tree now, Michael. Because, so obviously Jake confesses he was a spy, and the Na'vi take him and Grace captive, and Quaritch's men then destroy Home Tree, killing many, including Materi's father, the clan chief. The destruction of the Na'vi habitat Home Tree reminded commentators of the September 11th attacks on the World Trade Center. And one commentator noted Cameron's audacious willingness to question the sacred trauma of 9/11. So this is why I really respect this movie, because of this. So Cameron said he was surprised at how much it did look like September the 11th. What does he mean he was surprised? He was the one who made this fucking movie. Like he can't. I was surprised how it turned out. You had full control over how this looked. But this is the key. He added he did not think it was necessarily a bad thing. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's read between the lines here. Cameron would never say, "Oh yeah, this is 9/11," intentionally, because again, it is sacred. But he wanted to make it as traumatic as possible, and he wanted to make it, the destruction of Home Tree look like 9/11. And he's like, yeah, it was kind of a good thing because it's a good thing for him because it shows to Americans 9/11 is sacred. But the point is, Americans do 9/11 every day to other countries. Like this is what America does, and the trauma of 9/11 is not just something that is reserved for Americans. It's reserved for all these countries around the world who America unfortunately inflicts 9/11 upon, like quite on the regular. And again, so that's why he put this in the movie. And again, it's why I like this movie, like, because who would have the balls to do that? Again, he doesn't intentionally say he did it, but reading between the lines, I think you can infer, like, he did want to do that. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think I can see that. Like, that would be his reasoning. And I do think it is cool. And yeah, I would agree. Like, and I definitely think, like, the whole thing about, like, making people the enemy, like, basically manufacturing I guess the justification for a war seems like a very like obvious cool to how that's how 9/11 was used by the media. So
I'm talking specifically.
Yeah, you're talking about the whole thing of like America in basically being the ones who caused that 9/11 for other people, and I think that's also cool. In terms of its function.
The thing is, if you like 9/11 is something, especially like 12 years ago that was like sacred. You can't like
Yeah.
say anything like, oh well, yeah, sure. You would get like quote unquote cancelled back before.
Yeah.
That was the thing supposedly, even though it was always a thing. For saying like, oh yeah, well 9/11 wasn't so bad because look at what America does to countries like Iraq. Like that would be unacceptable. But then how many people were killed in the Iraq War? Like how many
Yeah.
civilians? Like 500,000 at least, and 3,000 people in 9/11. So if we just do the maths right there, you could say, yeah, the Iraq War is not comparable to 9/11 because it's a hell of a lot worse. And
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, and the same for Vietnam as well. You know, how there's never any focus, as we could see from the Aaron Sorkin movie. What was it? The Trial of the Chicago 7.
Yeah.
On all the people that America killed in Vietnam, where they killed like 1 million like civilians, at least.
Yes.
And it's like, just how many more 9/11s is that? Nobody cares, do they? In America. And this is Cameron saying, hey, look, this is what again America kind of does to, you know, these people who, you know, they're fighting a war with. And there you go. And he's trying to remove the sacredness of 9/11, and perhaps he's doing that because he's Canadian, you know.
Yeah, and he hates America. No, yeah, I think that is really
Again,
it definitely makes sense, and it shows, yeah, like obviously the I guess also, I mean, the other analogy I think that makes sense is, I assume you've kind of heard about like how, for example, like what's it called, the Mount Rushmore, that's it, was built on like the sacred kind of
oh yeah, definitely, yeah.
Black Hills, I think is what they're called in you know. So basically, like, it shows like how Americans historically also have been very kind of shown no regard to other countries' cultural landmarks. Obviously, that's not like, you know, 9/11 wasn't a cultural landmark, but that's kind of like another aspect of it as well, in terms of America, I guess, doing 9/11s.
Yes. Yeah, no, that is a good point. Again, yeah, this thing which happened, which of course was very dramatic, I think that's why it sticks on people's minds, you know, is something so sacred, but America does, like, in the last, you know, 50 or so years, has done so much worse. Yeah, but again, if you were to say that, that would be insanely controversial, even though it shouldn't be. And again, that's why that's why you can't say it, but I think you can infer that that's what he's doing, which is great to see in a movie which is the highest grossing movie ever. It's great that he kind of snuck that in. So I think he did anyway, judging by what he said. Like, oh, it's not bad, it's like that. And oh yeah, it does kind of look like that, doesn't it? Wink, wink. Anyway, so let's talk. So here's another criticism of this movie, Michael, which is the white savior trope. So Jake and Grace are freed, but they're imprisoned by Quaritch's forces. Pilot Trudy Chacon, that's Michelle Rodriguez's character, disgusted by Quaritch's brutality, airlifts Jake, Grace, and Norm to Grace's outpost. I think the reason why she does it because she isn't one of the white characters and she's a female character.
Yeah.
So I think that's why.
So she's allowed to be woke.
Yes, exactly.
After all, woke is when woman.
Yes, Jake regains the Navi's trust by connecting his mind to that of Turok, a dragon-like creature revered by the Navi. Supported by new chief Tsuti, Jake unites the clan, telling them to gather all the clans to battle the RDA. So this is why this movie is a white savior movie, Michael. So let's go to Wiki first, though. Many critics saw racist undertones in the film's treatment of the indigenous Navi, seeing it as a fantasy about race told from the point of view of white people, which reinforces the white messiah's fable, in which the white hero saves helpless primitive natives who are thus reduced to serving his ambitions and proving his heroism. Other reviews called Avatar an offensive assumption that non-whites need the white messiah to lead their crusades. Cameron argued, when indigenous populations who are now at a bow and arrow level are met with technologically superior forces, if somebody doesn't help them, they lose. So we are not talking about a racial group within an existing population fighting for their rights. So yeah, Cameron's saying basically someone has got to help them in this movie and in real life. You know, that is what Cameron is saying. So like, okay, he may be a white savior flying into, I don't know,
but he has to be.
Yeah, Bolivia to, you know, save this rainforest from like Nestle or not Nestle, I don't know. So some fucking massive corporation he wants to
McDonald's.
destroy. Yeah, but he has to be a white savior because there's literally no one else. He has to be the white savior, and you know, you shouldn't be criticized for that. And I agree. Some of the white savior stuff falls down as, you know, Jake is just doing what he can to help them, and, you know, at the end of the day, he is blue. You know, he is one of them. You know, he transforms into them, and he gives them knowledge of the humans, which he can give. You know, and it's basically solidarity. You know, from Jake Sully, like they need him, the Navi, because he knows the enemy. Yeah. So you agree that bit is not necessarily
Yeah. I get what you're saying. So yeah, basically, when he's in that situation, obviously it's either you're a white savior or you don't even make an effort.
Yeah, you just let it happen.
Yeah, which obviously is not good.
Yeah, exactly. When it becomes a white savior movie is when Jake connects with the Toruk dragon.
Yeah.
Because nobody else can do it. Why him? Because he's the special white guy. Like that's the thing. That didn't need to happen. If that didn't happen, then that would be okay, and you'd have to write around it differently.
Yeah, I mean, he could try and empower something. I mean, even then, he'd still be a bit of a white savior. But, for example, he could be like saying to, like the guy who he calls his brother. I can't remember what he's called. But he could be like, hey, why don't you try it? Like maybe he could pitch the idea of like, coming at it from above because it's not used. And then then the other guy could do it, and then it's kind of but it's not as ridiculous as him literally just being the one guy who's able to do it.
Exactly, like he is the one that can unite all the clans. It didn't need to be him. Like he is now the Navi's messiah. Like the Navi literally do bow down to him, and that's why it's White Savior 101. And if he didn't connect with the Toruk and unite all the clans, it wouldn't be a White Savior movie. But because he does that, it is. And again, it's different to Dances with Wolves since, Dances with Wolves doesn't save anything, and Lawrence of Arabia, that guy doesn't save anything either. But yeah, again, that he does save the Navi, but it's fine if he saves them just being who he is and not this like Messiah who's like special. Because then when that's the case and he connects with Toruk, then it's like, that's not a that
ain't it, Chief.
That ain't it, Chief. That's not just he's just doing what he can. That's he's this special guy, like he's the chosen one or whatever. And it's not one of the Navi that's the chosen one. It's this white guy who's been there for like 2 minutes. So yeah, that's and again from a plot perspective, it's predictable as well. And you got to have the second act disappointment of him, of Home Tree being destroyed and him being abandoned by the Navi, and then the hero pulls something out of his hat, which is of course getting on the Toruk dragon. So
yeah,
it's that bit is probably the most disappointing part of the movie for me. I don't know if you feel that way.
Yeah, I would agree too. Yeah, I didn't like that bit either. I thought it was dumb.
Yeah, it is dumb. So let's talk about the battle, Michael. Jake assembles the clans in an all or nothing battle, which is of course quite typical. They say this is our land. We're gonna fight them, and the audience basically is meant to cheer for American troops getting thrown off planes and killed.
Yeah, I was thinking that is something that is wild about this film.
Yeah, of course they're RDA troops, and I should have mentioned that in the 9/11 segment. Like, they're not American, they're RDA, but of course they're coded to be American. Like they're not non-American. And yeah, they are obviously the underdog. They're like the Viet Cong essentially, aren't they? The Navi fighting in those forests. And again, it's just insane for a movie that grows so much in America, of course, as well as all over the world. That would be the case, And it does seem incredible now. I bet if this movie was released now, you'd have like so many conservative like commentators talking about how woke it is and making like so much ad revenue off that. But because it became before that time period, because it came out before that time period, people just there was conservative
there was
whining.
some objection.
Yeah, but not from like people just accepted it as like, oh yeah, this is cool. Yeah, it didn't really become political. It was like people liked the Navi killing basically American troops. And I think, again, this couldn't have been released after like 9/11 because that I think it helped that it was released after the election of Obama and the end of the George Bush period. It was perfect to come out at that point to have that that message.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I will say this about this because I genuinely do wonder to some extent whether or not part of this, because let's be clear on the fact that the villains in this film are very kind of one-dimensional, and I do wonder to some extent whether or not this isn't entirely supposed to be a like thing of isn't it crazy that we're cheering the Americans being killed, and it's more like, because this film is quite simplistic and morally binary, the bad guys just naturally end up being the kind of people who can be justified in being killed. And in that sense, and I don't want to be a cynic here, but maybe the kind of craziness of cheering these people being killed.
That's why it's good propaganda. As you're describing good propaganda, because it's like the audience are cheering for American troops dying, but the reason why, of course, they're cheering is these guys are the bad guys, and these guys, like you said, are one-dimensional, like grunts and so on and so forth. And, it could come off as, well, I say it's, like, to me and you, obviously, I think we can, see through it, but to somebody, in middle America, where, I know that's a racially loaded term, but, someone who's like a kind of a Republican, they could cheer this on, and therefore, that's good propaganda. and this is why conservatives whine so much, because James Cameron basically produced some good anti-American propaganda, and basically I'm just going to go through that now because I think it's fun. Armand White of the New York Press dismissed the film as essentially a sentimental cartoon with a pacifist naturalist message that uses villainous Americans to misrepresent the facts about military capitalism and imperialism. Ooh. I like that. Many reviewers perceived an anti-American message in the film, equating RDA's private security forces to American soldiers. Glenn Beck said that Avatar was an anti-US human thing, which I like. Russell Moore in the Christian Post said, if you can get a theatre full of people in Kentucky to stand and applaud the defeat of their country in war, then you've got some amazing special effects. That's the thing, they're so mad the propaganda worked. They're so mad this movie was successful. John Podhertz of the Weekly Standard argued Avatar revealed hatred of the military and American institutions and the notion that to be human is just way too uncool, or to be American specifically. Charlie Madood of The Stranger commented that with the release of the film, the American culture industry exports an anti-American spectacle to an anti-American world. Yeah, that's maybe why it did so well in foreign markets. Yes, and someone else said it. Cinema for the Hate America crowd. I love this because they're openly admitting, like, we are the bad evil guys. Like, the bad evil guys depicted in this movie,
the only thing that defines them is their evilness, and
yes, we are identifying with them. Yes, how dare James Cameron make us look bad? And that's the thing. They should have just kept their mouths shut, but no, they can't. They can't resist. And again, that's the thing. It's good propaganda. It's making fun of these people. It is anti-American, despite what Cameron says. And these people just walked right into the trap, saying, "Oh yeah, no, we are those guys in that movie." And again, Cameron was seeking for it, to be an eye opener. Of course, movies like this rarely change people's views and perceptions. It pushes it along a little, and I think that's what Cameron said in his interviews. Like all these messages that he's put in Avatar, like he doesn't think he's going to change the world. He's just going to nudge people in the right direction, which is all you can expect, really. The Na'vi are rescued when Pandoran wildlife unexpectedly join the attack and overwhelm the humans, which Neytiri interprets as the Awa answering Jake's prayers. Again, you have Mother Nature fighting back, and it makes sense. It's a trope that works. Quaritch escapes his crashed aircraft and breaks open the Avatar link units containing Jake's human body.
Because obviously, if we find that the Na'vi to some extent hot, does it logically follow the reverse would be true? But
we're tiny.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, because I was thinking to myself, obviously, I think naturally what I was thinking was, so, how's penis size working here? Because he's probably
why are you so interested in this?
Because she's because he's so much shorter than her. It's kind of
obviously, it'd be difficult. Yeah, obviously. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, this is good. I'm glad we agree this is important, I assume.
Yeah, no, we definitely both agree on that, yeah. Anyway, so, again, and it's the end to Jake Sully's arc. Lays down his life, in revolutionary violence against the state. That's what he does. And he can't be a cog in the machine and, just go on about his life. He understands that he has his eyes opened, and again he gets reborn at the end because he's Jesus. So that's again maybe a white savior thing there. But it's not a coincidence that so many people who have been exploited, so many indigenous people around the world took inspiration from this film. I mean, he knew what he was doing, and he knew what he was doing with the character of Jake Sully. This movie grossed almost $3 billion when it was an anti-American movie, an anti-military movie, a pro-environment movie. This is basically my conclusion. I'll just conclude now.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. A pro-environment movie, anti-imperialism. He just jams all of this in there, and we've talked about all of these, and it's fun to talk about. And that's what's impressive, really, that he managed to do that rather than the actual plot. And of course, the special effects, that's impressive as well. But yeah, there's a whole page on on Wikipedia called The Themes in Avatar. That's imperialism, militarism, anti-Americanism, civilization and race, environment and property, religion and spirituality, which we didn't even get into, parallels with Hinduism, pantheism versus Christianity. And he just stuffs all of these themes into this movie. Some maybe aren't as intended as others. Definitely, the core four, shall we say, of anti-imperialism, anti-militarism, and pro Native Americans, how they see the world, and pro environments, etc. That's definitely all in there. So and it's just a shame that the story is really boring.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. But I respect him for shoving all this shit in. So the story is quite dull. I think I'm gonna give this an 8 out of 10. this is why I say it's aged well, because you look back and you think about what modern movies have become since then, and you're like, nothing compares to Avatar in terms of all the messaging and the themes it stuffs in. And yes, it might be propaganda, but it's really good propaganda. And I think that rises to a level of an 8 out of 10 when you consider also the special effects and so on. So yeah. There you go, Michael. There you go. What about you?
Okay. Yeah. So I guess maybe I'll break it down to like the three things which I think exist in this film. One, the boobs of the aliens. Two, no, I'm joking. So basically, obviously, point one, which I think is an unambiguous positive, is the special effects, visuals, the world itself. I think that's cool. Point two, which I think is an kind of unambiguous negative. I mean, I still don't think it's that bad, but like, the plot is very simplistic. The characterization is very simplistic. There's not really any kind of, I wouldn't say there are any nuanced characters in this entire film. Maybe you could say Neytiri's brother, because he's kind of like a bit adversarial, but even then, no, there really aren't any nuanced characters. The film doesn't have to like totally flesh out the world, but the fact that it's not there means that that's not really something that is there to be kind of appreciated. So yeah, I think that's unambiguous. The negative, the messaging, I think, is a little bit complicated. One of the things which I can't get out of my head is the fact that I feel like we're probably all in agreement that James Cameron is on some level a lib. And I do think, like, to some extent, I like the messaging, but I also wonder to what extent it was, I don't want to say intentional, because it was intentional, but like, I wonder to what extent, like, James Cameron's kind of actual sincere politics reflect how extreme the kind of political messaging of the movie is, because which you could say it doesn't necessarily matter, but it is something I was kind of like,
I mean, intentions do matter, I will say, but again, I think all the stuff we talked about, it's like, how can you not say that's coming from him? You could say, oh, he's just using it to make a better story, but like, if he feels like a guy who, he does seem like a political person. Like he literally said, the political stuff in this movie, like we took that, is meant to be there. So like, why, the anti, destroying the environment message is definitely meant to be in there. So is the anti-imperialism message. Why then you could easily see the logic, especially given his quotes, why, acting like Home Tree is like the 9/11 for the Na'vi. Like you can definitely see the logic there.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, I get it. I'm just kind of like, I guess the other thing I'll say actually, also, while I'm on it, I think one of the things that you said, which I can appreciate as a point of view, is like kind of, it's very simplistic, which makes it effective propaganda. And that's kind of entertaining. Like it's entertaining to see, like, I guess a film that's so kind of, I guess, bold about what it is.
Do you have to respect it on some level?
Yes.
You do.
I will say that on some level, also the nuance is cool. So which I just want to say, therefore, I don't think it's necessarily kind of like an unadulterated good, that it's like this simplistic, hardcore, just this is this message. But I think it is cool. It's just not like my 100% preference. With that said, I'm going to rate it slightly lower than you. I'm probably going to rate it I think I'll rate it a middling 7.
That's fair.
Yeah. So there we go.
Yeah, no, I give more credit to Cameron because he actually believes this shit. Again, he's a Hollywood lib, but like a Hollywood left of center lib,
Yeah.
Like he kind of likes the idea of anti-capitalism, even though he's not a full-on Marxist, Anyway, a very Chris Hayes kind of guy, maybe if you know him. So what do we? Okay, so yeah, join us next week for yet another movie review. Who have you been, Michael?
I've been Michael.
I've been Luke. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.
Goodbye.